Today we're going to continue to talk about the top 10 foods never to eat. We're going to go into detail again on how to lower blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides, and blood sugar levels. We're going to give you detailed information on why the United States is leading the world when it comes to heart disease, to diabetes, and to cancer. And we're going to give you cutting-edge technology that's available today to get rid of a lot of conditions and problems that we're having in the United States without the use of drugs. But let's talk in detail right now about breaking the dietary addictions and habits which have so plagued the United States. What we need to realize is this. Food habits are based on memory, taste, and other factors not related to nutrition. Now, let me go into detail on what I mean by that. Here's breaking dietary addictions and habits. We eat because it's fun. I mean, how many of you can honestly say that you go out and have a pizza or go out with your friends, you're not really hungry, you don't really know why you're going out, you're just going out for fellowship because it's fun, but you'll sit there and you may consume 1,000 or 1,500 calories because it was fun. I mean, how many of you like to sit down every night and have a large bowl of ice cream, which, by the way, is one of the worst things you can do. I'm not promoting eating ice cream every night, but every once in a while it's okay as long as it doesn't have certain chemicals in it, which we'll talk about in this segment. But we have to understand that we've got to learn to train ourselves differently. We eat because we're bored. How many times have you gone to the kitchen not even hungry? You open the refrigerator, just open the refrigerator, just out of habit because you're bored, you don't know what else to do, so we're going to sit around and we're going to eat. And trust me, friends, this is one of the worst things that you can do. Let me give you a perfect example. I attended my 30th high school reunion a couple of years ago, which was an interesting experience. And I was shocked at how different people aged at different rates. And when we talk about our stress management series on the same segment that we're doing in a few days, we'll go into detail on why that happens. But what ends up happening is, let me give you a perfect example. Let's say you're going to eat just an extra tablespoon of butter or just an extra 100 calories a day. Well, in 30 days, you've taken in an extra 3,000 calories of food that you can't process. You've gained a pound. Well, after 12 months, you've gained 12 pounds, which that's really not that big of a deal. But after 10 years, you've gained 120 pounds. And we had folks that I graduated from high school with that were thin, and 30 years later, they'd gained hundreds of pounds of weight. And that's something that's so insidious and it creeps up on you so easily, and it's so easy to correct if you do it while you're gaining the weight. Now, once you gain 200 or 300 pounds, it becomes a very big chore to lose it. And one of the things that causes a lot of this are thyroid functions. Let me stop for just a second and talk about the thyroid. Two things that we use on a regular basis that we shouldn't be using, and they're used in our water supply, are chlorine and fluorine. Chlorine and fluorine have almost the exact same molecular structure as iodine. Iodine is absolutely critical for proper thyroid function. When you're drinking water that contains fluorine and chlorine, not only these products poisonous and chemicals that your body should never ingest, but it also interferes with thyroid function because the thyroid is tricked into thinking that these chemicals are iodine because human beings don't normally drink fluorine or chlorine in the food supply. I mean, God didn't set it up that way. These were added as toxic ingredients into our water supply. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, well, you have to have chlorine in order to keep the water bacteria-free because the bacteria can cause all kinds of health problems. Yes, that's true. And if you have toxic water and you're trying to purify it, chlorine, if you don't have other technology like reverse osmosis or steam distillation, is okay to use. But the reality is it's okay to use to kill the bacteria in the water, but then you need to filter the water again to remove the chlorine. Very, very critical that you understand that because chlorine is a poison. They used to use chlorine gas in World War I and World War II in trench warfare. And I remember when I was at Florida State and I was in organic chemistry at Florida State, we'd have a laboratory. We'd actually have to use a vented vapor hood. They call it a gas hood. And if we've ever had any kind of compounds that we mix together that cause chlorine gas to be released, we couldn't inhale it because you would die from it. And so we'd have to use a vented hood so you wouldn't die from the toxic gas that was being produced. This is the same toxic material they're putting into the water supply to kill the products in the water that are dangerous to you. Because remember, the chlorine is something that has been used for a long, long time to clean up the municipal water treatment systems. But the reality is you can use reverse osmosis, you can use steam distillation, you can use all these different types of products to reduce the amount of chemicals in the water supply. Now, the next is fluoride. Fluoride is a byproduct of aluminum production. It's an incredibly poisonous product. It's right up there with arsenic and strychnine. You can actually, if a child were to eat a tube of toothpaste, he could die from fluoride poisoning. It's that toxic. And what's crazy is we use it in the toothpaste because it promotes supposedly rapid collagen expansion to harden the teeth to help reduce cavities. I've got 4 children. I've got a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and an 18-year-old. My wife and I have been married for almost 25 years. And here's what I found. None of my children have ever had a cavity, and none of my children have ever had fluoride. If you get the sugar out of the diet, they don't get cavities and their teeth stay strong. So why in the world do we want to put a product like fluoride, which is also used as rat poison, into the water supply to help produce or help decrease the amount of tooth decay? Plus, we also know that too much fluoride in your teeth can actually cause teeth mottling and cause all kinds of other problems with the bones and brittle bones. So I don't recommend using fluoride or chlorine at all because of what they do to the thyroid and because of what they do to the body because of their toxicity nature. Now let's go back to our subject. We deserve a treat. That's why we eat. Well, how many times have you said, well, we're going to go ahead and eat on a regular basis because we are happy because we deserve a treat, or I got an A in school? And that's okay to do that. If you do a treat like that, if every once in a while, if you've got a goal and you decide to go ahead and do a treat, I don't have a problem. If you want to sit down at night and you want to have a bowl of ice cream because it's a treat, because it's your birthday, number one, learn something. This is very important. I've learned this with my kids. Don't keep ice cream in the house. That's real important. Make it inconvenient to eat ice cream. Make yourself have to get up, get in your car, drive to the grocery store, get dressed, do all the things you've got to do, get out in the rain if it's raining, and go buy your ice cream. Because if you have the ice cream in the house every single night, what's going to end up happening is you're going to eat it every single night. Make it special, make it a treat. And also, don't buy ice cream that has a bunch of additives and chemicals in it. Get ice cream without hydrogenated oils, without trans fats, without all kinds of stabilizers and guar gums and additives and artificial everything. I mean, one of the flavors they use is made from lice killer. I mean, why do you want to put lice killer in your ice cream and eat it as a human being? Not necessary. So eat good food if you're going to eat food like that. Make sure it's healthy food. Well, sometimes actually we eat because we're hungry. Well, there's a new concept, eating because we're hungry. But very rarely do we ever eat because we need a specific nutrient. I mean, we don't say, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to eat this because it's going to be high in iodine, like sea kelp, because I need to help increase my functioning of my thyroid, so my thyroid will help maintain my weight, so I'm not going to get fat. We don't say that. We think, oh, wow, let's eat something because it tastes good, not because it's healthy for us. Last night, my wife and I stopped by at a health food store on the way to the airport to come up here to do the tapings. And it was interesting, we had a huge salad of kale, and kale is loaded with all kinds of nutrients. But how often do you sit down and have a huge salad of kale? We don't think about it. One of the things we eat all the time are iceberg lettuce products. Iceberg lettuce products are probably the worst lettuce you can possibly eat. It is literally devoid of nutrients. So let me ask you a question. If you're going to go ahead and you're going to increase your calorie intake by eating certain types of food, doesn't it make more sense to eat foods that you know are going to be high in nutrition rather than just eating empty, sugar-based junk food that cannot support health? Remember, the first day that your body takes in less energy than it requires to live on is the first day of illness, and your body continues to deteriorate from that day forward if you don't change your dietary protocols. Perfect example. How many people do we know are stay unbelievably ill with gastrointestinal upset problems? And so they're constantly taking antacids, they're constantly having health problems. And how many people do you know that have gone and had gastric bypass surgery done now? Well, I've got a news flash for everybody listening, and please don't get upset with me if you've had gastric bypass surgery, because I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're listening, because hopefully we can help you get through the phases that you're going to go through. But when you remove large portions of your small intestine, and you decide that you don't really need those anymore because you're basically unable to control the amount of food that you're eating, friends, let me tell you something. God put those intestines in your body for a very specific purpose, for very specific nutrient absorption. And just because we can go in and we can whack out large portions of our intestinal tract and not die, doesn't mean it's not healthy. I know a friend of mine last year had one of his top workers in his company went in for gastric bypass surgery, and I said, his name's Chris Avitito, a very dear friend of mine. And I said to Chris, I said, well, how's your associate doing? He goes, he's not doing well. And I said, well, I tried to warn him before he went in for the surgery. He goes, well, he's getting sicker and sicker. Well, 3 weeks after the surgery, he died. It's a very risky, very debilitating surgery, which has all types of horrible side effects with it. And it would only be considered as a last resort for me and anyone that I would ever recommend it to. But the reality is it doesn't have to be considered at all, because think about this. The only reason that gastric bypass surgery works is because it decreases the body's ability to absorb the nutrients from the food that you're eating, or it makes your stomach so small that you can't eat more than a couple tablespoons of food to help yourself to lose weight. Well, let me ask you a question. If you just restricted your food intake to the same amount you could eat after you've had the surgery, you'd have the same weight loss results without all of the debilitating side effects. So you need to really think about surgeries like that before you make decisions like that. TV plays a major part in our food habits. Remember, 50% of all TV advertising is promoting foods that are low in nutritional value. Probably pretty much the other 50% probably promotes drugs that are absolutely have no nutritional value and have all kinds of horrible, debilitating side effects. You need to avoid watching TV commercials. Now, I say, how is that possible? Especially with children in the room. What I do is I've trained my children, if we watch TV, which we occasionally do. I love watching shows like Breakthrough with Pastor Parsley and other Christian ministry shows. But what we do, those are commercial free, so this is not a problem with those. But what happens is when you watch a show like on one of the major networks, watch the commercials and how much junk food and how many drugs are being promoted. And what I've done is I've taught my children, and I do it myself, I just mute the commercials. Just mute them, turn them off, don't listen to it. Because why do you want to listen to all this junk? Because how many times you watch TV and you're not even hungry and they'll do a chocolate chip cookie commercial. And all of a sudden now you're like, now you want chocolate chip cookies. So just avoid listening to that kind of information. And by the way, there are natural chocolate chip cookies that do taste good and that are actually, they're not, I wouldn't say they're healthy, but they're better for you than the store-bought varieties that have so many trans fats and hydrogenated oils. Soft drink soda consumption is more than doubled. It's horrible what this is doing to the children in our country and the obesity problems that we're having. Obesity in children is an epidemic. ADD, ADHD is at epidemic proportions. And remember, sugar has literally no nutritive value. Sodas not only are high in sugar, but they're high in phosphoric acid. They have a very low pH. They literally cause the body to digest its own bones to neutralize the acidity. That's why so many hip fractures are occurring in elderly folks, because they've drunk sodas their entire life, and the sodas have basically destroyed their main calcium store, which is the bone and the skeletal muscle system. The skeletal system, which basically supports the muscle system, and they're having all kinds of health problems. For instance, how many times have you heard the person's 70 years old, 55 years old, 60 years old, and they fall and they break their hip? That's not what happens in most cases. In most cases, they actually break their hip and then they fall. Their hips have become that porous and that brittle. So you have to learn that there's certain foods you need to avoid, and one of them is sodas. And also in our next segment, we're going to talk about diet sodas and diet sweeteners and how bad they are, because remember, we spend billions of dollars a year on potato chips. We have become a country that convenience foods have become a way of life. But friends, let me tell you, and this is so important that you understand what I'm saying here. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to tell you that you're not raising your kids right. I'm not here to tell you that there's a problem with your weight. I mean, good Lord, you can go look in the mirror and you can decide for yourself how you look. Or you can look at your children and see how your kids look. But let me tell you something, friends. If you're going to listen to me about health and fitness, I just applaud you. I commend you. But if you will listen to me about health and fitness for your children, that will bring me great joy, and here's why. I have people all the time that I try to help with health and nutrition. I have people all the time that are coming by the house and they want to talk to me, or they see me at a radio station, or they see me at an airport and they recognize me from all of the different TV broadcasts that we've done. And I always ask them a question about health. Like, are you willing to do what it takes to change your health? Are you willing to do what it takes to lower your blood pressure, to lower your cholesterol, to lower your triglycerides, to lower your blood sugar levels? Are you willing to do what it's going to take to feel better? Are you willing to do what it's going to take to have absolute tremendous energy and tremendous vitality every day for the rest of your life? Well, a lot of times they say yes, a lot of times they say no. And here's what I've always learned. If they really aren't sure about if they're willing to do what it's going to take, I kind of change subjects and talk about something besides nutrition, because here's the truth. Not everybody's going to get the message that we're trying to teach you today. Not everybody cares enough. I mean, some people, in some instances in the United States, a lot of people figure a six-pack of beer and a TV set, that's all there is to life anyhow. That's not what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about having life and having abundantly. How many of you listening today would love to increase your energy levels, to feel better, to look better, to have tremendous vitality throughout your entire life? And if your answer to that is yes, and you want to do that, this is the program for you, because I want you to know that your health is your most valuable asset. And I promise you, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter what kind of career that you have, if you lose your health, you'll do anything you have to, including spending all of your money, losing your career, to get your health back. But that's not God's best for you. God's best for you is to have abundant life, abundant energy, and to feel good every single day of your life. Now, friends, I want to thank you again for joining me on this segment of Let's Get Healthy. Today we're going to talk about processed foods that I call suicide on the installment plan. We're going to go into detail on why certain types of foods increase the risks of heart disease, increase the risks of diabetes, and increase the risks of cancer. We'll also talk about some of these top 10 foods never to eat and continue on that list. But friends, listen to me for a second. It's very important that you understand something. I want you to be healthy. I know a lot of the stuff that we talk about on here is kind of negative as far as statistics, and this is bad and that's bad, but I want to give you healthy alternatives today, and we want to talk about the processed foods and what they do and how you can correct your health by changing the foods that you eat. So let's go ahead and get started. Basically, we can no longer obtain much truly fresh food. Instead, our food has been processed, heated, frozen, preserved, canned, stored, and artificially flavored. And when we do this to our bodies, and our bodies have to constantly deal with this onslaught of junk food, what ends up happening is this: we increase the risks of cardiovascular disease. And we're going to talk about that in detail a little bit more today, because cardiovascular disease is one of the #1, in fact, it is still the #1 killer in the United States. And we have over 1 million people a year that are dying from cardiovascular disease. And now cancer, because of the processed foods and lifestyle choices, is overtaking heart disease, and it probably will in the next few years. But let's talk about this just 1 second. One of the big things we tell folks never to eat on our list of top 10 foods never to put into your body are hydrogenated trans fats. Those foods that are basically synthetic fats that have been man-made, which really increase the risks of heart disease. They actually block LDL receptor sites in the system, causing an elevation of LDL cholesterol. In addition to that, they increase arterial plaquing. Now I want you to look at this first slide. This is actually an artery. So let me share something. Let's share something with you. If you take an artery and you roll it up like this, and you're looking at it, and it's a healthy artery, and you open it back up, and you pin it on a plate, this is what we're looking at. It's slick, it's slippery, and the blood can flow over it very, very easily. Very important that you understand that. That's the way our arteries are supposed to look. Now, when we eat a lot of processed foods, hydrogenated foods, if we have elevated salt, insulin levels, elevated inorganic calcium in our diet, what ends up happening is, look at the next slide. Again, open it back up all the way, and you'll see it looks like hamburger, it looks like pizza. This is actually the inside of a coronary artery, which has been completely plaqued. The person whose autopsy this came from died of a massive heart attack. And what happens is these little pieces break off, and they actually get lodged in the different smaller arteries in the body and cause stroke, or can cause coronary thrombosis or heart attack. Very, very dangerous. That's why it's important to keep your arteries looking like the first picture compared to the second picture, because it's a lot healthier, because it maintains good blood flow throughout the body. Also, when you have coronary artery thrombosis and you have all of this plaque buildup, it decreases oxygen flow to the tissue. When you decrease oxygen flow to the tissue, you increase your risks of cancer, and you increase your risks of diabetes, and you increase your risks of heart disease. All of this is directly related to the diet that we eat. That's why it's very important to learn about the processed foods. And this is why I call this particular presentation Suicide on the Installment Plan, because little by little, this plaquing builds up inside of these arteries, causing all of these health problems. Very, very important that you know this. And that's why I wanted to show you these slides, because we have literally millions of people have problems with their hearts and with their health right now in the United States because of cardiovascular disease. And if you don't change what you're doing on a regular basis, you basically get these types of results. It doesn't matter whether you believe it. It doesn't matter if you don't believe it. It doesn't make any difference. It's like taking vinegar and baking soda. And if it didn't make such an unbelievable mess, I would do it right here. You mix it together. And if you do it in the kitchen, do it in your sink. It bubbles up and foams everywhere. And it doesn't matter whether you say, this isn't going to work, this should work, this so won't work. This is what happens. When you have certain biochemical reactions, they always occur when you use them. Another thing you need to stay away from, besides the hydrogenated oils, those high-fat luncheon meats, bacon, sausage, ham, pepperoni, and hot dogs. We've mentioned that several times throughout this series, because those foods also increase the saturated fat level so much, and the pork increases the protein so much. In fact, there's a very good article. It's from you can look it up if you'd like. It's in the Biological Therapy, Volume 1, Number 2, 1983, by Professor Hans Reckwig. And it's called The Adverse Influence of Pork Consumption on Health. And he actually lists over 20 different diseases that are transmitted from pigs into humans. And he tells you that you should never eat pork products because they're so toxic to the human body. But of course, God knew that. That's why he told us in Leviticus, and he told us in Deuteronomy not to do this. Now remember, in the old city of Jerusalem, back in the olden days, and also when they were learning about the clean and unclean food, they had a big pit outside the city of Jerusalem. And in this pit, they would dump their sewage. Now remember, you didn't go to the bathroom and flush the toilet 2,000 years ago. It didn't happen. There was no toilet. There was no running water, except for maybe some cities like Rome, which had the running water which was coming into the main areas of the city. But the reality is, in the vast majority of the world, there was no running water, so God knew that he had to have sanitary laws and dietary laws, and God's relationship to man laws, and God's relationship to, man's relationship to man laws, to control everything on earth. So that's why he gave us the sanitary laws, because they would go out in these big pits and they would dump their sewage. Well, guess what was in the bottom of the pit? Pigs. And the pigs ate the sewage. And so to them, these are like filthy, filthy, filthy animals, and they should be for us too. I mean, a pig will eat anything. It'll eat the cancerous boils off another pig. If a hog dies on the hog farm and falls into the middle of the hogs, they'll eat them. They'll cannibalize their own people, their own friends, I guess you want to call whatever a pig has. So the reality is, don't eat pig. Stay away from the processed foods with luncheon meats. Now, processing techniques as well as home preparation usually destroys or removes vital nutrients. What does that mean? Well, basically what that means is this. When you cook food, you destroy vitamins. When you basically boil foods if you take your vegetables and you boil them and boil them and boil them, that's no good, because when you boil them excessively, you basically end up losing a lot of the mineral content. And so because the minerals are boiled away in the boiling water, that's why you should never overcook foods. You should always eat them, kind of crispy still as far as your fruits and your vegetables. Now, it's interesting. A few months ago, my wife and I were speaking in a church. We speak at churches all over the country. And it was up in Georgia. And it was a smaller town, and we had some dear friends of ours who were the pastors there, and we wanted to go out for dinner after the service. And we had our kids with us, so we said, well, we'll take your car. We were in the motor coach, and so we decided to go ahead and take their car to a restaurant. Well, we went to several restaurants that they said were, quote, healthy. One of them, every single food was cooked in the restaurant. Every single food. It's a famous restaurant in North Georgia. They have a big buffet. Every product they cooked was cooked in margarine. And we asked. And he had called up beforehand and said, do you cook your food in butter? And they said, yes, everything's cooked in butter. Well, the problem is you can't say to them, is it cooked in butter? You have to say to them, is it cooked in real butter or is it cooked in margarine? Because most people think that margarine is real butter, and it's not. And so when we got there, I said to them, because I knew the place used margarine because we had talked about going there years ago, and they did. So we got there and they said, oh no, we cook everything in margarine. So we're looking around for a place to eat. Finally, we decided to go get a hamburger. Now you think, you ate a hamburger at a restaurant? Well, there's nothing wrong with beef if you eat it in moderation. But my wife, it's a well-known hamburger chain, and they have this shake that's not really a shake. I can't use the name of the shake because you'll know what restaurant it is, and this is not a favorable comment. But it was. If you call the office, I'll tell you what I'll tell you what it is. But the shake is a processed dairy product that literally has no dairy in it, and it tastes great. And my wife and I wouldn't drink it. I said, I'm not going to drink this. This is junk. She went ahead and drank it because she wanted one with her hamburger, and it wasn't an hour later. She goes, man, Ted, I'm getting a really, really bad headache. And I said, it was the shake. And she goes, it can't be the shake. I used to drink those. And I said, you used to drink them before your body got cleaned out. I said, this is some toxic stuff. I said, do you look at the ingredients label? There's not even dairy in it. It's just all just chemicals and sugar. Well, it wasn't 2 hours later. She's laying in the motorhome with a massive headache. She was completely disabled for almost 48 hours, having to take medication for her headache, which we hate to do, because of this silly shake that wasn't real. Now think about that for a second. When you let the stuff melt, it kind of turns into a foam paste. It doesn't even turn into dairy. And my son, who's 18 years old, who goes out with his college friends on a regular basis to different types of fast food restaurants, which there's nothing you can do about that because he doesn't eat at home that much anymore, so it's his choice. He told me, he says, oh, you should never eat that. We all know how bad those products are. I mean, we all know, like college students know how bad that is. You should never eat it. Well, the reality is that's what happens with a lot of the processed foods. And those foods have so little nutrients that our bodies can't live on them and be healthy. Orange juice, let me give you an example. The Journal of the American Medical Association stated that large amounts of vitamin C is lost in orange juice. Plus, if you're drinking orange juice first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, if I do that, it messes with my blood sugar so bad that I have to basically go take a nap because it's so much sugar at once. I don't even recommend drinking juices unless they're very diluted. Then they're okay. And with children, be very careful with that because a lot of kids drink a lot of juice, end up with diabetes, and a lot of dairy products that are processed end up with diabetes, and you need to avoid that. Let the kids drink water. Get them used to drinking water. Frozen vegetables can lose over 80% of their nutrient content by being processed and being cooked. Canned vegetables can lose over 90% of their vitamin nutrient content. And so what ends up happening is now you're dealing with all of these calories from all of these food with almost no nutrient density, which means our bodies are getting the food and the calories that it needs for energy, but it's not getting any nutrients, no vitamins or minerals or essential fats or amino acids that it needs to repair itself. So the body begins to break down and to degenerate. And some of the theories of aging actually say that when the body can't get the raw materials that it needs to rebuild a new cell when the cells get old, that the next cell copy that's being made is an inferior duplicate because the nutrients weren't there. And every day, it's like taking a photocopy and making a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy and not having enough toner in your machine. it doesn't work. Sooner or later, you can't even read the copy. And that's what a lot of people feel that the theory of aging is all about, that our bodies eventually wear out with the cell reproduction because we simply don't have enough nutrients in our diet. That's why the U.S. right now is leading the world when it comes to heart disease, to diabetes, and cancer. Now, you know, it's interesting to me. My grandfather lived to be 86 years old. Now, it was interesting because he'd gone through a lot, but he was raised on a farm. He died back in 1970. Right after the moonshot in '69. It was interesting because it was so interesting to me because he was born in the late 1800s. And I remember one time we were standing out there and looking at the sky like in 1969. I was like 14 years old. And he said to me, he goes, they call me Teddy. He goes, Teddy, I don't believe that we've ever been to the moon. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, I don't believe it. Now think about what he was saying. He was born before there was an automobile. Okay, and he had seen automobiles, he had seen airplanes, he had seen rockets, he had seen world wars, and his mind could not believe that we had actually been able to take a spaceship and go to the moon. But what was interesting, he was always working, he was always exercising, he was always in great shape, and then when he's 86 years old, he just had a stroke and he died. Now, everybody's going to die. That's something you have to understand. It's a question of how you're going to die. I don't want to die with horrible, miserable, debilitating diseases that I'm going to be stuck on some kind of chemotherapy or IV drip or some kind of horrible thing for 3 or 4 months until I die. That's a bad way to die. But the reality is we all die. It's just a question of how we're going to die. Nowadays, 50% of the folks that reach the age of 70 have senile dementia, and they end up dying in a nursing home with Alzheimer's disease or some equivalent thereof, wondering where they are for the last 5 years of their life. That's a horrible death. That's not what I believe God's best is for you. God's best for you is to feel great every single day of your life and then for God to call you home. That to me is an ideal death. Home cooking is decreasing. Did you know almost half the meals are eaten out in restaurants right now? I mean, folks are amazed. We always say to them, well, you know, let's go out and eat something. And they think, well, you guys really eat out in restaurants? Well, we do, but we don't do it very often. Maybe we do it once a week. And we do it on date night every Friday night. We'll go out to a nice restaurant. We ask them what they cook their food in. The restaurants that we go to now, they all know us. That's pretty obvious after we're there a couple of times asking all these questions. And they always make sure the food is prepared the way we'd like. And so the reality is, all you have to do is ask a few questions. Do you use margarine? Do you use butter? Ask them that question. Do you use olive oil? Do you use canola oil? Don't use canola oil. Canola oil is no good. Soy oil is no good. Soybeans are no good. Soy products, tofu, all junk. Don't put it in your body. Elevates estrogen in men. Very, very unhealthy. The fast-paced lifestyle that we have. 40% of the food budget is spent out for most people, and it's usually non-nutritive foods. We're eating junk food when we eat out. Processed foods. We rely upon processed foods, and we can't control the reliability of the nutrient quality of the food. Is food still as nutritious? Absolutely not. Apples lose more than 50% of their vitamin C content in storage, and that's if they're picked while they are ripe. The vast majority of fruits and vegetables are picked now and processed before they're even ripe. That's why in most cases, fresh vegetables are going to be the best if they're picked when they're ripe, which most of the time they're not. Secondly, frozen vegetables are in some cases better than fresh vegetables. Let me tell you why. The frozen vegetables are always picked when they're ripe and taken right to the processing plant and frozen. Now, canned vegetables, don't even bother with those. Frozen peas can lose up to 83% of their nutrient content. Canned peas can lose up to 94% of their nutrient content. But the reality is, if the fresh vegetables or the fresh peas were picked when they weren't ripe, they probably have no nutrient content whatsoever. Fast-paced lifestyle. Little time is left to plan and prepare for balanced meals. We eat on the run. We skip meals. Only 1 in 20 elementary school children eat a good nutritional breakfast. And basically what ends up happening is our families, because of our fast-paced lifestyles, have all kinds of health problems on an ongoing basis. That's, again, what we've talked about in this series, why the U.S. is leading the world when it comes to heart disease, why it's leading the world when it comes to diabetes, why it's leading the world in cancer, why we have we're the number one country as far as medical costs, number one cost in drug as far as drug costs, number one country in the world as far as doctors per capita, and why we have over 10 million children taking drugs on a regular basis to combat things like attention deficit disorder. In the vast majority of cases, dietary change can correct it. I have seen countless lives turned around by simply making the changes in their diet and lifestyle that we've been talking about today. They've gone from sick and tired to healthy and full of energy, and I want the same for you. Processed foods, junk foods, one of the biggest problems in the United States because of the foods that we're eating have no nutrient density. They have no nutrient value. So we're eating foods that are basically sustaining life, but they're not sustaining health. That's why we put together our Healthy Country Cooking Cookbook. And what this book does, it allows you to take a systematic process and go through your kitchen and get rid of all the junk, get rid of the top 10 foods never to eat, and the recipes are absolutely delicious. There's a banana pudding recipe in here that You can't believe how good it is. There's also a non-fried fried chicken recipe, which I think Sharon needs to turn into some contest internationally and win an award for. It's the best fried chicken you've ever tasted, and it's healthy. So you can eat good, you can look good, you can have tremendous energy, and you can enjoy the food that you eat, and you make it easy through Healthy Country Cooking. Secondly, our Maximum Health DVD series. This is a 6-hour DVD series that I did at my church using overheads. It's not the same video quality you'd get through Breakthrough, but it's very, very, very good because of the information content that it has. It goes into micro detail on how to lower blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides, and blood sugar levels, and how to feel great every single day of your life. It takes the time that we had at our church service for an hour each Wednesday night for 5-6 weeks to go through everything in detail. I recommend it for everyone who's listening today. Plus, if you're not eating the right kind of foods or if your body's deficient, chances are you'll need to get a good type of protein supplement to ensure that your body can make all the essential enzymes and blood vessels and all the things that it needs, the lean muscle mass, all of it with protein. I recommend this product because it's very easy to digest. My family and I take it every single day. HGH Stimulate helps lower blood pressure, decrease body fat levels, gets rid of cellulite. It helps basically to increase human growth hormone levels. It's a natural male Viagra, the ultimate multiple, excellent product. Cortico B, which is a very, very important one for stress, also helps support the heart. Excellent vitamin C, which now remember all of these products are in a cellulose-based capsule. They're not tablets. They're very, very important that you understand that because this is not some generic junk. This is stuff that we've had developed for our own office that I've developed. The old-fashioned cod liver oil, delicious. We also recommend sublingual B12. This is a methylcobalamin, not a cyanide cobalt. What this means is that this is not made from cyanide, which is poisonous. Very, very important. This goes under the tongue. It's sublingual, and it doesn't create toxicity in your system. In addition to that, the vitamin E 400 IU, because the vitamin E, what it does, helps to thin the blood, increase oxygen to the system, make you feel well, and also really decreases the risks of heart disease and diabetes. We also have another product that we use that's an iodine support product for your thyroid, so you can help maintain healthy thyroid function to help burn body fat and look absolutely great all of your life. Now remember, a lot of you are calling me, you're writing me, you're sending emails. We'll get back to you. We'll answer those as quickly as we possibly can. But please sign up for our free email health update. That's available to you as Breakthrough viewers because you've purchased this program. I want to thank you again for your support. I want to thank you that you've been able to learn so much through this program and support Breakthrough and support our ministry. And I just want to say God bless you. We'll see you soon.